Well, good evening and welcome to our Wednesday Night Connect. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I am excited to be in conversation with Simone. Simone is joining us tonight all the way from across the shores. And we thoroughly enjoy just being in conversation with each other. But tonight, so glad to have you connected on Facebook, on YouTube with us as well. And we're going to be delving into the subject of taking risks. How does one make the decision when it comes to taking a risk? So let me invite Simone to come on in, say good evening, give a shout out to you all tonight so you can just get a glimpse of her and just hear from her as a good evening. Welcome to you all.
Good evening, everybody. So good to jump on a live with you, Pastor Renal. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I always have the best convos with you. Some of the best discussions and interactions come from a very familiar space. So I'm excited to take that space onto a larger platform to just give people a little bit of how crazy our discussions can actually get. So I'm excited. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to some of that energy tonight. And we can say welcome home to you from over here, but then technically where you are is also called home. So you live in this very unique space and very unique world in multiple places that you call home.
Right.
But we'll get into some of that in conversation tonight. Aside from people just knowing your name, here's how the introductions work when we come into conversation. I have a list of questions numbered from 1 through to 12. You have not seen these questions before, but you get to select a number. I ask you a question. Your response to the question is what introduces you a little bit better to our online audience tonight. So take a deep breath. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Numbers 1 through 12. What's your first selection?
Let's go with number 3.
Number 3. Are you a reader, and what is your favorite or most recent read?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I love reading. Absolutely.
Okay.
I was actually just talking to some young people the past weekend about the importance of reading, and the question that I threw to them whether they think they're going to live longer. So that's quite interesting that's questions asked back at me. And the recent read is I actually am reading through the John Maxwell's Defining the Leader Within You 2.0. So I just picked up a copy of that. So I'm going through that and keen to see how that plays out.
Awesome. So talking to a bunch of young people about reading, that makes you sound a little bit old. You do know that, right? When you hear
these
that.
were babies. These were babies, and they're the generation that hates reading. So yeah.
Well, just to make it clear, she's way younger than me tonight. So I am the oldest one in the room tonight. To everybody online, I'm going to give you 2 more picks. So your second pick, numbers 1 through 12, except for number 3.
Okay, let's go with number 1.
Number 1, a person who has influenced your life the most.
A person that has influenced my life the most. The most would be, does have to be one person.
We can give you the option. Let's not get you in trouble with anybody. So you go ahead and answer.
I would think definitely my folks. They're really just so influential on various aspects of life, not just in parenting, but just the way they do life has been a great influence on who I am today. So they're definitely the most influential people in my life.
Great, safe route. Well done to you. Final question.
7. Let's go with number 7.
Number 7.
Yeah.
What has been the highlight of your week thus far?
The highlight of my week is that it was my birthday a couple of days ago. So that was a highlight. So I turned a new leaf, a golden leaf, and that has been super exciting. And just leading up all the days through, that was super exciting, and it was really just nice to celebrate that.
Oh yeah, certainly. I don't think anything could compare to that highlight. Let me take a moment to steal here and actually give a shout out. It's my sister's birthday today. So let me just
Oh,
give a
happy
shout out and say
birthday
happy birthday
to
to
the
her as
sis.
well. It's interesting that I think there were about 6 people around us today. It was their birthday. This is their birth date. So about
November
six
month.
different people that I knew. But of course, my sister, nobody else can complain, but my sister's going to get the special shout out word tonight.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, fantastic. What did you do for the birthday?
Well, it was a weekday, so I went to work, and then we had a get together. We had a cookout over the weekend, which was on Friday. So our weekends here are different. It's on Saturday, and it's on Friday and Saturday, and
Yeah.
Sundays to Thursdays we at work. So we got together with some friends over the weekend. During the week, I just had some little get-togethers at work and in and around, and yeah, it's just low key, but lots of cool celebrations nonetheless.
Awesome. Sounds like fun. Lots of fun. So yeah, you did indicate your week is slightly different. The
That's
scheduling for
correct.
your week is slightly
Yeah.
different. And that's because your parents at some point in your life decided to relocate you. So South African born, but did not quite grow up here. Although this is still home. And of course, Siloam Sandton, I'm going to be very courageous and make the statement that that is still home in
For
very many
sure.
ways. Um, Immediately, just having the opportunity to, move out of the country, live in a different location, um, people would reckon that possibly puts you in a space of privilege because you get, a different scenario, different landscape. Especially those who have some challenges within the current context of our country would think, well, that immediately positions you in a space of privilege. So I want to know from you, uh, I know that we're talking about taking risks and so forth, but just on the
Yeah.
basis of your growing up, how much of reality is there in that you end up in a place of privilege, or you're growing up in a space of privilege because your parents managed to move you out of a country and relocate you somewhere else? Is it really the golden opportunity and everything that some others may see it to be?
Wow, that's a brilliant question. I think the notion of privilege can really stem to so many different interpretations. And I consider the fact that given the opportunity to travel, to see the world, to be exposed to different people from various walks of life, and so on and so forth, I consider myself to be privileged to be in those spaces, to experience that. And perhaps had my parents not made the decision to actually venture out of their comfort zones, the question I often ask myself is, would have had those opportunities? I think with coupled with the experience of being a migrant is the considerable challenges that are faced with associated privileges, so to say. So I think in context of my story, I identify privilege as the ability to have had met, the kind of people and had the relationships that I'm so fortunate to have throughout the years with people from different walks of life and have had them impact my life in one way or the other. And of course, to see different parts of the world as a result of, being in a better, my parents being in a better position and to provide those opportunities for us when we were much younger. But with that came, like I said, the challenges of being exposed to different attributes of life that I was probably at the time never expecting. And one of those were most notably the culture shock of what I experienced when I first moved here. And, it was incredibly difficult because with the culture shock was coupled with a massive identity crisis, because all my life, I was told under the systematic structure of how South Africa is governed, that based on our skin color and based on the way we function as a culture, that we belong to an Indian culture. And so when you are uprooted and you go with that identity of who you are and what those cultural attributes mean to you and what they represent as an extension of you, coming to this part of the world and trying to communicate that was an utter confusion, not only to me, but to those around me. And so, I remember this one time someone said, you look like an Indian, you have the same color of skin tone as an Indian person, but your passport says that you're South African. So how does that actually work? And I mean, I was like just like 11 years old, and nobody had ever asked me that question before. And I was like, that is actually a really good question. How do I explain that? And I couldn't at the time, because for me, under my comfort zone, it made sense to the people that I lived with, I grew up with, I churched with, I worked with, or schooled with at the time, rather. This was a sense of normality. And then it was, just stripping down to the layers of what that actually meant. So out here in the Middle East, well, not currently, but certainly you're looking at about 20, 30 years ago, people were treated or remunerated based on their nationality, right?
Okay.
So at the bottom of the food chain, so to say, was your migrant laborers. It was people that were from Pakistan, that were from India, that were from Bangladesh, that were from all parts of sort of the Middle Asian localities of the world, the regions of the world. And based on the fact of what I look back at now would be a lack of knowledge or ignorance, was how you would be treated. So there was a confusion from the people around us to say that, okay, you look a certain way and I can identify from my own interpretation of what I see who you are, but then you don't have any cultural associations to what I see as Indians should actually look and be and sound and behave like. So how are you South African? And now to interpret that as like an 11, 12-year-old was the most difficult thing. And then the other case was that, just calling everyone who looked brown an Indian was an offensive thing. So I have friends that come from Sri Lanka. Some of my closest friends are from Pakistan. Some of my closest friends are Bangladesh. And one of the most offensive things you can ever do is call them Indian. So if you're sitting down, and I mean, we can all look the same. We all look predominantly the same. If you take a photo, you'd probably think most of us are from the same country. But if you hear us speak and you get to know the different stories, we are just a big mixed bag of different people. And so when I used to meet people from different Asian countries for the first time and be like, hey, are you Indian? I would just get a look that was just like, what are you even saying? And so to strip the layers of identity, understanding who I was, what it meant on a global scale, how to identify as that, how to communicate that, was a great challenge. It was really daunting, actually. It was also to say, okay, if I'm not Indian, because my passport doesn't call me an Indian, Indians from India don't identify me as part of their circle. So who am I? And so, it was coming to those just those points of really digging deep, thinking, breaking down different structural ways of thinking, and then coming to a point where you identify, and it's still an ongoing journey, who you truly are, what you stand for, and moving forward with that. I think the other challenge that comes to mind is the case of religion. And so the first international school that I went to, oh my. So firstly, we first got here and we were like probably a family, one family of probably 50 people in the country that were South African, let alone from a bigger expat community that were non-Muslim. So we were really in the minority on every scale. Okay, there was just the first issue of being brown skinned, then not knowing what sort of identity you belong to.
Category of brown, you had to figure out.
Yes, what category of brown I was. And then it now boiled down to the fact that I faced these challenges of, just explaining to people who would want to know, why would you believe in Prophet Jesus and not the one true God who we believe in? Because we also believe in Prophet Jesus, but we just don't believe he's God. And then that was the additional discussion that I had to have with people around me to really just stand up for my faith in a position where I was in, my family and I were the minority, and certainly in spaces like school where it was just myself. And this one time in the school that I was sharing with you, we went to the school and it was all fine and well for the first couple of months. I think the first 2 months was really okay. It was a bit of a culture shock. There were people speaking different languages, and it was just, trying to assimilate to that way of life. And then we changed principal. Okay, so the principal at the time leaves, and we're told we're getting this other principal who is quite an extremist. He's quite set in his traditional ways, and he's going to come in, but everything's going to be okay. We're just going to go on as usual. So me being optimistic, I was like, okay, as long as I have my friends, everything will be okay. And so he came in, and one of the first rules that he mandated was for every single female student, whether you were Muslim or non-Muslim, to wear hijab. Okay.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you can't be serious. So the first thing I did was I went up and I was like, no, I'm Christian. I really can't do that. And they were like, okay, well, if you don't, you'll be kicked out of the school. And then I was like, well, we can't get kicked out of the school because it's mid-year and our years are also different. And, I started to think, now I have an issue with what I look like. And now I have to now wear this hijab, which is going to be part of my added aesthetic identity. And who is Simone really going to be?
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, we had to just follow the rules, and we went with it. So it was actually just so interesting, because looking back, I don't think the hijab really defines who you are, because I look back at moments where I was called onto assembly stages and platforms to deliver speeches and things like that. And it was such a beautiful opportunity to stand under the hijab and profess who I was and who I loved and who I served. And so it almost gave them a culture shock, because, hey, you look like us. You're rocking the school uniform. You're wearing a hijab over your head, but now you're talking to us on a completely different principle. Who are you really? And so, it was these little moments that I really took a great deal in showcasing what I stood for and what I believed. I may not have necessarily had a banner over my head every single day telling people who I was and what I believed in, but in those moments it was really incredibly beautiful to stand there and deliver what I stood for. And for that you will be respected. It was those moments of humor and entertainment. I know we were really entertaining for my parents, and they were really supportive. They never made us feel as though we were doing something wrong. They always encouraged us, and they said, you know what, you know who you are. It's okay. It's not going to define you, and it's part of your uniform. Or you have to just think of it as it's an accessory to your uniform. And that's what we saw. Like, you wear a hoodie, right? So when you put the hoodie over you, it's a covering over your head. If you have long hair and you're a female and you put your hair up in a bun, you're going to look as though you're wearing a hijab. So that's what my parents said. They said, go ahead and just think of it as a school uniform accessory and everything will be fine. And it was. And so we were there for the rest of the academic year. And then the next year we moved to another international school. But that was something that I often remember as part of a very interesting and a special part to my early days in Oman. Yeah.
Wow, sounds like quite a shock of an experience to go through. The whole thing of identity crisis. But at the same time, maybe you actually found a space that you could enjoy experiencing the culture. That's I think that's something that it sounds like your parents brought you into a space, a mindset to kind of embrace where you are right now and enjoy the opportunity to experience a different culture. Not just be kind of conformed to a box that you feel you had come from. Now, I know that with relocating and shifting into a different space, another part of great responsibility that was put on your shoulders was family responsibility, right? Because going out there, mom and dad not really knowing too many people and so forth, you also had siblings. And so there were days that you guys were kind of, take care of each other because mom and dad need to go off and sort these other things out that is going to be essential to us building our lives here. So relocation wasn't that easy from that point of view either, right?
No, not at all. Absolutely not.
Overnight mom.
Yeah, it was
part-time. Let's not be all bad on your mom.
my My parents were, I don't know, I can't remember many times that they ever really openly showed us any signs of them not having it all together. There are probably discussions that they had where they were thinking, did we do the right thing, or are we really aligned to what we heard from God? But in the reality of our everyday space, there was such a comfort and an assurance that they brought us, that their energy and their positivity and their hope in what God was doing in that space was just an encouragement to us in a way. And I remember when we first got to Muscat, the capital, my mom and dad were told that immediately the next day they were going to be starting work. And we didn't have a placement at school yet. The days were different. So we were just, we arrived on the weekend here. They had to report to work tomorrow. They didn't have their resident permits yet. So they had to get all the admin and all of the difficult stuff, the foundational stuff done first before, things like getting us into routine were in order. And I think one of the instructions at the time was that she was not allowed to bring us to the school that she was teaching at. So, we never stayed at home alone before because my grandparents lived with us in South Africa. So we always had elders around us taking care. Food was already prepared. And, if there was any sort of protection that was needed, we always had an elder to go to. So the first day we were told that mom and dad are going to school. We had to lock the door, and we had to make sure that we don't, there was a gas stove. We had to make sure that we don't turn on the gas stove. What had happened was also at the airport, we had to leave 3 of our boxes behind, and one of the boxes had all the books and the toys. So we had no entertainment. And the TV, the local TV cable was in Arabic, and we just couldn't, it was just a mess, right? So we were told, okay, there's food. This is what I need to do. I never cooked in my life. I was, at that point, I think I was just 11, turning 12, something like that. And then we had specific instructions for Zach, and he was 2, my brother, and my sister Charisse was 8. So we had to just make sense of the hours that they were gone and try to entertain ourselves, not get into too much of trouble, and mom and dad will be home soon. So they locked the door, and we woke up early. And I think we probably woke up at like about 8, and they were only coming back at around 2. So for those hours, I think for the first couple of weeks, we just sort of, I remember clearly, we had one Hillsong CD. It was Hillsong, not people just like us, all over the world. Yes, I'll never forget the CD, right? And what my sister and I used to do is we used to put this onto there was a little DVD player in the apartment that we had. And we would just have these like little makeshift concerts to entertain ourselves because there was no other form of entertainment. There was no phones, there was no tablets.
The 2-year-old kid was being entertained by Hillsongs.
Yeah, so we would just make my brother sit on the couch with his little stuffed animal. And we had a lot of letters and things which our cousins wrote for us. And, just a lot of cool memorabilia from our farewell. And so we would just reread that to each other every day. And there were points where we would just even cry. But the cue was that when mom and dad came home, we would stop crying. We would be strong for them. So and then I remember we would just go in the kitchen and try to make our own cooking shows and, just have a camera, like our hands up there, and just try to entertain ourselves because we didn't have any other option. So we just grew closer, and Zach was just entertained. He enjoyed it. And we kept ourselves out of trouble whilst they were at work until, we started getting a sort of routine, getting into assimilation mode to where we were, and then building our life from there.
Well, you think Zach enjoyed it. Next interview has got to be asking him if it was not some of the most scarring moments of his life.
I think. Absolutely.
Let's hope that mom and dad are not somehow getting into trouble here for legally just leaving their kids to themselves.
Oh man!
But many years later, from what we understand, you guys do have your sanity still, and you seem to have made it okay. Because Charisse is actually online with us, and she says yes, best big sis we could ask for, and a leader from them days. Oh, and she said, don't forget the Ludo and Snakes and Ladders.
Yes, I can't remember.
Excellent.
I can't believe she remembered that. We had a Ludo and Snakes and Ladder box, which somehow my
Yeah.
gran managed to smuggle into our suitcase. And then we also had that. So we had the letters, we had the Ludo and Snakes and Ladder. Later on, I think 2 nights later, we found a little foodstuff store, which my dad bought us a pack of Uno cards.
Okay.
And then Zach just had, like, I think he had one of those little toy cars, and he was really just not a problematic or troublesome kid. So as long as he was fed and he had some entertainment, he was okay. So we really had it easy that way. But it was tough.
Sounds pretty
It was
much like
really
how
tough.
life is right now for Zach. I mean, I think as long as he's fed and has his entertainment. Okay,
For
sorry, I'm really
sure.
having a go at him. He's not going to appreciate this at
Yeah,
all.
he as long as he has food and Wi-Fi, he's the happiest guy. He's easy to please.
So listen, the relocation, yes, I guess it came with a sense of difference, not necessarily privilege, but I think maybe new opportunities, right, for the fam. But
Yes.
at the same time came greater responsibility. And speaking to you tonight, I mean, we're talking about that responsibility that was in your shoulders. Of course, not the easiest of journeys for your siblings who are younger than you at that time. And then there's the whole identity crisis almost that you spoke about, shifting from just a let's call it a 4-dimensional world almost that we lived in previous SA, which I mean in many ways is still there from a mindset point of view, shifting to the global stage, and then I mean trying to figure out the category of brown you were, and
Yeah.
so forth. So it came with its challenges. It came with its excitements of a different culture, the challenges of living in a different culture. But that's got to do a lot with your earlier, younger years, right? And then you had the opportunity to come back to SA, did some amazing living here, just achieve so much academically. Okay, I'm not going to go ahead and just put it, and
Thank you.
tell everybody about it, but I know achieved much academically, had yourself sort of in a bit of a comfortable position, and then earmarked to climb a nice ladder, I would say, just from my limited knowledge of what was happening in your world. But then one day you get a call and hey, there's opportunities back across the ocean. And what I really want to find out from you tonight, the crux of it all is you took a mega risk, leaving here again. And it's not that you didn't have an opportunity presented to you, but in taking the risk to go back into a space that again would challenge you, it was also leaving back a sense of comfort. It was also leaving what could potentially make you quite an admirable candidate with a nice title below your name and so forth in the corporate sector, or in the sector that you were dealing in. And then aside from that, you've taken some interesting risks very recently. Let's just throw that in, a little bit of flavor to the conversation. So I am also talking, ladies and gentlemen, to one who has recently become a recording artist in the gospel space as well. And that was some risk. I mean, that you took right there as well. We don't have all of the time to tell your crazy stories tonight. But
Yeah.
essentially, the reason I'm having a conversation with you tonight, Sim, is you're a risk taker and you don't always wait for all the boxes to be checked. So the big question we have for you tonight is, how is it that you come to the decision where risk is involved? What is it that influences your decision making that you can go out there, that you can make these risky decisions? And when I call it risk, it is in no way uncalculated or putting you in danger in any way, that kind of thing. But you were able to take some good risks that positioned you well, both in the global space, both just in the creative space, using your talents and your abilities, your skills, your academia, all of that coming together. So being as young as you are, female, in the kind of zones that you've been in, risk taker, please tell us about it.
Wow. That was Yeah, recording artist. I don't know if I'm there yet, but yeah, it's really been such a beautiful space to just experiment and take risks. I think that just the ability, firstly, to take the risks that we when I say we, I say that my family and I have been exposed to, firstly comes from watching and seeing how that transpires. So who is in the circle is really important. And, just watching, firstly, from as young as we were, like I shared, my parents take some giant leaps in terms of various areas of their lives, whether it was in their careers, whether it was in serving in various aspects of church, whether it was just in the community here in Oman. And the manner in which they went to sort of had an impact in our family discussions, and how to go about that. But I think when I look at my personal trajectory of decisions that I had to make over the past couple of years, the first thing I align risk to is purpose. So if the risk is really, really, really large, the first thing that I ask myself is that aligned to the purpose and where I'm going to? Because the thing that I've discovered about risk is that it really can be neutral, in the sense that, for instance, if moving or relocating overseas is aligned to your purpose, all right, the risk to leave all that you have in your comfort zone and make the move and, just start up a life in a different country can work out perfectly well if you choose to take that opportunity and all the risk that is associated with that. However, the same opportunity, if not aligned to another person who just randomly wakes up and says, well, I just want to leave the country, and it is not associated or aligned to their purpose in life, could end up in a state of chaos. So that is the first point of how I think about any type of risk in life before I take the leap. Is it associated to where I'm going, the desires that have been placed in my heart and mind, and how is that going to impact the future and what the future holds? So that is the thought process that is in my mind. The second part is the people. One of the most underrated parts of the body. We speak about the tongue being the most powerful tool, and it really is. But also one that is not often spoke about is the ear. Who are the people? What are the kind of words that are filling your ears, which affect the kind of decisions that would put you in a position to make, really bold moves that will enable you to take the risk and then see the fruition of that decision. So I'm very conscious about the type of people that I keep around me in terms of that. Ones that really understand in terms of where I'm going, where I'm heading to, where it's coming from, that can really be accountable, that I can be accountable to, just make sure that we have those blocks in check. The one thing I don't do is I don't overthink it. I realize that overthinking can sometimes be the most dampener to the beauty of situations. And if I look at both my parents and my own story, they made a decision to really just uproot based on desire. So I think before I continue, the one thing that we must understand is that uprooting yourself or taking a risk should never be because you are in a space of running away from something. It should be because you really have a desire to progress or to impact and to give back into the world in a greater scale than where you're currently placed at. So if you're going to take a risk, for instance, in my case, to leave the country because you're running away from something, and it's all just negative things that you're listing, then that is a red flag. However, if you look at the risk-taking as a means of progression, of impact, not just to your immediate circle, but the global community, the risk becomes more bearable. It becomes more and more palatable, something that you can really just, muster up the confidence to say, I can do this, no matter how crazy it sounds. So, so that is firstly one point of it. And then the second thing is to just make sure that you don't overthink, so that you don't delay yourself from executing and making the decisions. My parents had literally 3 weeks to pack up their entire lives, 2 businesses, their own professions, 3 kids under 10, and one was 2, one was 8, and really just go to a country. We really never visited any part of the world before that. We weren't on a plane. We didn't even know where Oman was. We didn't have an idea of where we were going to. So their risk was significantly greater than just me coming back here. I had no point of reference to where we were going, nor did they. So it happened really fast because we were aligned to purpose. We were aligned to a plan that was far bigger than my parents just getting jobs and then providing for us a better life. That was just a prerequisite to a supernatural story, in terms of their testimony and their different accolades. And where I was concerned, it was a weekend. I was literally at a point in my life where I don't know if I've told you this before, Pastor, but I had spent 3 years, 2.5 years, applying for work in various parts of the globe, as well as South Africa. And I had an Excel sheet that I had documented, and I had close to 68 rejections, right, which I documented. So I had the date that I would apply for something, the name of the company, the progress of an interview, or, what step I was in, and then the final result. All right. So I would even consider myself getting interviewed to third and final round and then not getting the job as a rejection. So 68 rejections, till I came to a point where I was like, I'm not going to try anymore, because God knows where I'm supposed to be. And it was a place of saying I desired progression, and I wanted to impact the world in a space that I saw beyond where I currently was in various aspects of life. So when the opportunity came, it was literally a weekend. I had a weekend and then some to make a decision that would shift and shake my now or then comfort zone. And I enjoyed that space. It was a short space that I enjoyed, the sabbatical in South Africa, which I came back as an intern, and then I came and really just grew in that space. But a very short space to make a decision to then leave what I had developed and worked and built all those years, to say, God, you know best. And the progression is just a prerequisite to a bigger impact that I have to play in this specific region of the world.
Wow, so much to just take away from what you were sharing. But just that last point that you were talking about, not having too much of time, so to say, to make the decision. But it's not necessarily something that was overnight, because something I heard you repeat was knowing or understanding purpose.
Yes.
One of the statements you made was to align risk to purpose. So even though it was almost a weekend that you had to make the decision, do you drop everything? Do you go? Would you say you knew your purpose before that opportunity came? Could you tick that box on this decision to say, fine, this does meet with purpose?
Absolutely. I would say that the detail at the time, this was now in 2019, was not very clear. And that is very typical of who God is. He will give you the bigger picture, but the detail you would figure out after you've lived through the experience. And at the time, the detail of all of that did not make sense, or how and the why. And sometimes this is where the calculated risk questions come into play: the how, the whys, the whens, the timings. Will I be able to do this, that? All of those questions were unanswered when I left the airport on the day that I departed the country. But looking back, everything makes sense, because believe it or not, I actually had an offer at a really awesome company in Johannesburg. 2 weeks before I left the country. All right. So I had a really awesome offer, and I went through like 6 different interviews for that in the same company. And towards the end, there was just something that was not sitting right in my spirit for several reasons. And they offered me something, and it was one of the interviews. I mean, 68 rejections later, and there's one of the companies that I wanted with a job description that was just like, I mean, everything was like ticking boxes.
Wow.
And I responded on the Monday morning. I had to give a response, and I was like, dear so and so, I regret to inform you that I will not be taking up the offer. And I would imagine that like at that point, everybody in the room, you just hear crickets creaking, because I'm telling people that I'm trusting to God for this progression and this impact, but it wasn't in the conventional way, because the job is just a prerequisite, and that's how I see it. Being able to provide for your family opportunities and to enable them to see and experience the world is beautiful, and it's wonderful, but it's just a prerequisite to a massive story of how you are going to impact and progress in a land that is not yours. And so when I look at it, it's more than just how I can receive. So I'm receiving a job, I'm receiving an excellent offer, I'm receiving this comfort space and this standard of living that's amazing. And that's all for me, which is amazing. But the bigger question is, when I get there, how are the people here going to be impacted by my presence? What am I bringing that is going to shift and shake the community, the region, the country? Because they're offering me an opportunity, and everything's playing to my desires. But what is in it for them? What is in it for their benefit of me being here? And so when I looked at that, I'm recalling the moment that I actually sent that email to decline that offer, I was actually also just in a place of now what? Because the year is almost ending and there's nothing. And then boom, this opportunity came by. And it turns out through COVID that specific department, and it was a continental regional that I was going to head and oversee for this company, was actually shut down because of COVID. And at the time, Did I know the detail? Did I know what was going to happen? Absolutely not. I mean, nothing could have prepared us for what was about to happen in February of 2020. But at this time, when I had this very nagging feeling that was saying, you can't go ahead with this, and I didn't really know the detail of the why, but just went with the obedience of going with in faith, knowing that I can just just trust my decision in faith, then we went ahead with it, and it was one of the best decisions.
So I was going to ask you, how much of an influence does money have on your decision making in terms of taking the risk? I think you may have answered that in part, because you're simply just turning down an offer that just looks beautiful and obviously has some nice figures attached to it, not quite aware of what is to come, then the greater focus that you have is on purpose. So it's not just about the rand value, but your greater focus shifted to purpose. So you kind of answered that question already. Something I want to pick up on, and it just kind of intrigued me. So I see Chantal is watching from outside of the country as well, and she has agreed with you. I'm guessing that the agreement, because I may have missed it in the moment, but the agreement has come in on the point of purpose and aligning your decisions to your purpose, your risk to your purpose. But if it's something else, Chantal, then you can let us know if I've missed it there. But what I want to pick up on was this point you made on the tongue is powerful, but your ears are too, is what you said. And you said it is important who is speaking into your life. So I want to know you don't have to tell us exactly who, but who are these? What is it about these people? What type of personality, what type of mindset should we allow to influence our environment if we're in a space where, as you said, you want to progress and you want to give back? You want to not just think from a domestic perspective, but you want to think global. Those are the sort of things that were happening in your life at that time. So what should we look for in those who are around us and that we allow to speak into our lives that would help us determine whether or not that is limiting or helping to open up our mindset and our opportunities for life? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're referring to what I would call the inner circle of faith, or the inner circle of friends, the inner circle.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's firstly incredibly important. If you don't have an inner circle of people that are really speaking the right kind of lingo into your life, then you need to make some adjustments, whether it's with family or people that have been friends with you for years. They may not know where they feature on your sort of spheres or your rings of circles, from the inner core into the outer rings, but you know where their placement and value fits. So it's firstly important to identify who in your circle are those people. And some of the characteristics, personally for me, is number one, crazy faith. There's two individuals that come to mind, and I won't mention them on this live, but they're two people that have journeyed with me, and they're just at this point friends over a long period of time, and they have just crazy levels of faith, to the point that when I share something with the individual or they share something with me, we laugh, because we think if people really heard us right now, or think that we're thinking on this levels, whether it's our own family or extended family, whatever it may be, the first reaction or even the expression could be a doubt factor in making sure that this doesn't happen, right?
Okay.
So you really got to make sure that the people who are around you have that crazy level of belief and thinking out the box, because they will give you the support and the encouragement to really see the bigger picture and add the detail in the value of where you're heading. And that is just aligned to your purpose, as they also discern and watch the moves that you're making. And people that you can just be vulnerable with, people that are, really just, you can just pick up the phone and they're reliable. And you can really count on them to be there from the beginning to the end. And I think one of the key decisions in me being here is because I could do that. I could pick up the phone and say, look, this is what's happening. I am going to be leaving the country in a week, and this is how it's playing out. And the first response that I got from the person was, go for it. There was not a question of how, when, why. I mean, they knew the context of my story, and what I actually wanted to do, and what was going to transpire, and all the plans and the things we wanted to impact the community with in terms of, on the ground stuff here. And, in fact, being in Oman for this long in this season of life was not even my plan, because I was only supposed to be here for 6 months. And then after 6 months of 2020, I was intending to go somewhere else. And that. So yeah, it's also just beautiful to be flexible and to know that this entire process is not based on rigid, bucket list items to tick off. You need to be flexible to how God leads. So yeah, two core things is crazy faith, being able to, which is coupled with being able to think out the box, and that just trickles down to the fact that these people are reliable. A third factor is that you can count on them to always be around and support you, but they get it. And I think with the crazy faith, you don't have to say too much. It's people that will not ask the unnecessary questions. They'll ask you the right questions to get you thinking the right thoughts. And those are the things that get fed through the ear. And then when you actually declare them or make affirmations or just speak that out loud, it's important to how things will actually fall into place.
All right. So great stuff. People with crazy faith, and people that are reliable if you're going to be vulnerable in their space. You can really trust them. Well, that's fantastic stuff. I'm going to go through some of the things that you spoke about tonight and just kind of sum up, because our time's counting down on us, and just kind of sum up some of the things that we've spoken about. First off, when you're taking risk, risk is going to bring you into a space of identity crisis. It's going to question you, your beliefs, your personality, just what your mindset is. Risk is going to do that. It is going to challenge you from a point of identity. And then just on the subject of how do you determine taking a risk when you have a decision to make in your life? First off, some pointed out to us, it's important who's in the circle. Who have you learned from about risk taking? For her, it was her parents. Her parents made this move early on in her life. So she had observed, she had watched others taking the risk. And so she had a perspective, maybe not a full understanding, but at least a perspective on risk taking. And powerful statement for tonight: align risk to purpose. Never run away from something. Don't take the risk because you're trying to run away from something, because that's just going to be a snowball of negativity. But if you feel like the move is going to be a progress in your life and the opportunity for you to give back to a community, then go ahead, align that risk to purpose and make that move. Then the third thing that Sims spoke to us about regarding taking the risk and making the decision is be aware of the people in your inner circle, as she termed it, because the tongue is powerful, but so is the ear. So who are you listening to when you're making these decisions? And some of the character traits you want to look out for in the people who are advising you in your risk decisions is, are they people of crazy faith? And can you be vulnerable but rely on them? Are they reliable people who are speaking into your life? So that's how I can sum up some of our conversation for tonight. Just quickly, I want to ask you, in retrospect, were there any painful experiences that was painful at the time, but now when you look back and you reflect on, you would say actually prepared you to make some major moves and to take some leaps of faith and to be where you are today?
Absolutely. I think in a nutshell, that would be separation. Separation is extremely painful. We experience separation in various forms, whether you part with someone and they leave your physical space, separation in death. Various aspects of separation are incredibly painful. And one of the normalities, or the only constant in an immigrant or a migrant's life, is the constant of separation. Firstly, home is everywhere but nowhere. The second thing is you form and just get to meet some incredible people from around the world who you get into such beautiful relationships and friendships with. They become part of your life, your routine, and then suddenly they have to leave. And it's that pain in those early years of getting close, because we didn't have any family here. We had really close family friends, which thank God became our family, and they were incredible. The people in our church were a huge part of our family, and just that familiarity of church culture just brought us so closely together, though we were from different walks and different backgrounds and parts of life. And then to develop all of that in this, expat culture, and then as quickly as you develop it, to quickly have to let it go was always a painful experience, especially in my, preteen, teenage years, all throughout teenagehood. I would just make so many friends, and, you just become family, and the next thing their parents are getting jobs in different countries, so you have to leave. And back then we didn't really have technology, we didn't really have FaceTime and things like that, so it was really tough and it was painful. So that's definitely one of the very painful experiences, but it worked out in the end, because it just makes you stronger. It makes you appreciate and value people and their presence in your life even more than you can actually fathom.
In a contra way, it almost like builds your ability to make people connections,
Absolutely.
even though at some point you have to be letting that go. So
Absolutely.
pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we've come to pretty much the end of our conversation, except to ask you if you have any final words for those who are connected with us online and listening to us tonight. Any final words that you want to share with them before we say goodnight?
Oh, thank you everybody for just joining us tonight. I hope that if you could take away anything, just understanding that whatever you are faced with in terms of taking a risk in any capacity, just ask yourself, is this aligned to my impact to the world, my purpose, and go for it, run with it. And you will see the benefit and the fruit of that on the other side. So yeah, thank you so much, Pastor Rennell, for inviting me over to chat with you. I really had such a blast tonight. Thank you.
Fantastic. You are most welcome. Always enjoy the conversation with you. And to everybody online, thank you for connecting tonight. All of the hearts and the hugs and the loves coming your way, especially from Sharice. I mean,
I miss
some
that girl
bias
so much.
coming in there. But thank you for connecting. And again, when it comes to taking your risk, whatever final decisions you're making as the year approaches to its close, I do pray that you are aware of your purpose and that you would align the risk to purpose tonight, and that's going to put you in a position to really not just progress in your own space, but to be a contributor for wherever it is the next season of life has you located. So God bless you all tonight. Thanks for connecting, and we will see you all next week. Same